Welcome to our first Tyden Talks episode of 2023. To kick off January's episode, we are joined today by Scott Pederson, Regional Sales Manager for the Western U.S. region. Scott has an extensive career in shipping, logistics, and the supply chain security industry here at Tyden Brooks. Scott, great to finally have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us today on Tyden Talks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pleased to be here today.
Excellent. Great. And, Scott, as you know, we have a focus this month, in particular on the automotive sector and EVs. And so knowing your expertise in this area, I wanted to have you on the podcast to help listeners understand how the automotive industry secures their shipments in North America. And, I'm sure you may have some insights, latest industry news or just some solutions that, you've worked on, that might be unique that you want to share with everybody today.
Sure. Let me first give you a little background on myself. I worked in automotive retail for 4 years back in my 20s, and then went to grad school and came out of that getting into the international shipping business with Sealand Service and NYK Line. That lasted roughly 15 years, and then I had a brief foray into supply chain software, scheduling software, tracking software, which has been quite valuable in the seal industry, actually. And after that brief foray, I was hired by Tyden Bramall initially, before we merged with E.J. Brooks and became Tyden Brooks.
Yeah, I knew you had an extensive background with obviously shipping and logistics, and that's why I thought, hey, who better to have on the call to explain that to our listeners. So I'll let you go ahead and fire away and maybe share the basics to everybody of how we secure it, whether it could be obviously on truck, maybe parts, or rail, or even international shipments.
Sure. Well, I was focused primarily on the security of Autorack rail cars and some of the challenges that auto shippers potentially face if they don't properly secure the auto racks. To quickly get into addressing it, I would first like to say, since EVs are part of the monthly discussion, that really there's no difference in the loading or the securing of an EV versus a gasoline-powered vehicle. In fact, they're actually shipped together. So the big difference is the EV wouldn't have any gasoline on board, but would have somewhat of a charge on its battery. So the vehicles can be driven on and off to the articulated 10-section rail cars.
Interesting.
So these rail cars, I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be familiar with them, are somewhat translucent from the side because they basically have a cage-type exterior, and they're quite boxy and typically yellow in color. And they have two places that they open, the front and the back, and the doors are quite tall. I would estimate 14 feet high, and are quite heavy, and are actually fairly easy to open if they're not locked. So that's where our seals come in. Our seals are used to lock the front and the back of those auto racks, and just to slip it in, the front seal, the direction the headlights are pointed on the vehicles inside, should always be fastened with a green-colored seal. I'm guessing that most people that are involved with shipping cars already know this, but therefore they need to be ordered in pairs with a neutral color for the backside of the rail car. The types of seals that are commonly used are high security seals. I have seen mild bolt seals used, but I don't recommend those because the typical length of a mild bolt seal is not sufficient to bridge the the distance needed to slide it through the hasp and still be able to get the locking body on the bottom. I have seen it done though, and so I'm not going to say it can't be done. However, that is why more people that are not using hardened bolt seals select cable seals to secure the rail car. Typically, they will order a high security cable, 1/8 of an inch in diameter, maybe 3.5 millimeters. I have seen 3/16 of an inch or 5 millimeter cable seals used for the same purpose. There's a huge difference in the difficulty of cutting those various thicknesses. With a 3.5 millimeter or a 1/8 inch diameter being cuttable with what I'll call a C7, a handheld cable cutter that could theoretically be kept in a person's pocket and not even noticeable. The 5 millimeter can't be cut with a handheld, so anybody that wants to cut that with a cable cutter is going to have to bring something somewhere in the order of 20 to 36 inches in length with two handles for leverage. So setting those aside, there's one other option, and it's very commonly used, and that would be a hardened bolt seal. And what I mean by hardened is they would be rated as a Rockwell 42 or 44 on their hardness scale. These are typically 4 inches long or longer. I've seen 6-inch, which is kind of overkill at this point, but and they have about a 15-degree bend in the middle to make them easier to slide into the hasps. There are a handful of options to choose from, some designed to accommodate a barcode and others simply used as a barrier, and usually those would only include a serial number. Of course, as I've just mentioned, 50% of those seals that are produced would be green, and there's various shades of green that I've seen in the marketplace. Something that would be more fluorescent would be more desirable, as these rail cars are viewed at night, and a darker green seal can show up under flashlight as basically black. So right. In that case, they're going to have to get a little closer, and a lot of times they'll just shine their flashlights through the side of the rail car to make a quick determination of which way the cars are positioned inside of there. And the reason that they do that is that there have been situations where rail cars have been turned around when they're off onto a side track, and I have heard stories of these rail cars reconnected to 9 other rail cars, completely messing up the unloading process.
Oh, wow. That would be horrible.
It wouldn't. It's very expensive. So anyway, some of the risk factors that auto shippers face would include, and these are kind of in the order of frequency, seals that have not been locked by the loading contractors. That does happen, and in which case often they are caught before they leave the rail property, but sometimes they are not, and they arrive at destination and they do hear about it. Other situations are where they buy an inferior bolt seal and the fastening of the locking body does not go smoothly. And so in many cases I've heard, I pounded that seal on with a rock or some other tool that's readily available to get it to stay on. However, wow, that doesn't necessarily lock the seal. And of course, then there's situations where the locking body drops off the bolt and the rail car is simply moving along with the shank hanging in the hasp, but no locking body on the bottom.
Wow, making it really vulnerable then too.
Yes, and what I've observed over the last almost 20 years is the ones that have the poor locking mechanisms and tend to fail are coming straight from Asia, and they aren't going through any kind of a quality control process. So that's something that Tyden Brooks is very good at, as an employee of Tyden Brooks, I've been able to speak with a number of shippers who have come back to us if they've left because the quality of the seals were not there.
Yep. Yeah. We're definitely known for that. And obviously, our ISO 9001 standard is super important. But like you say, who you get it from, their quality control measures, how they go about doing that when they're producing these hardened bolts is critical for sure.
Yes, exactly. Well, historically, Autorack rail cars, at least going back, let's say 20 to 30 years, there was a high frequency of bad order cars. And when I say bad order, that typically was in reference to the doors. Being that the doors are so tall, they were easily getting out of shape, so to speak. So they weren't really overlapping properly or sealing at the top effectively. And so one of the frequently heard stories from those days were that people would climb on top of the Autorack and find a way to pry out the top parts of the doors, since the bottom was the place it was secured, and then slide inside of the rail car.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I remember hearing about it. It's just crazy people would attempt that considering how high up there you go. But when you want to get in, I guess you'll do whatever it takes.
Well, if it's a free ride across the country, it might be very appetizing for some people. And then they can get inside and then work their way from car to car to car or truck to truck to truck and stay warm in the winter by running the gas out of the vehicle, or stay cool in the summer by also running the gas and the air conditioner.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and I do recall, and I'm sure you remember hearing these stories too, where airbags, there was a lot of, people trying to rip those out, and they would throw them off the auto racks in the slow areas when they'd all jump in. You know what I mean? There's always those sort of zones where the rail car slows down. They would jump in, climb in through at the top, as you say, and start trying to rifle different things and parts out. And I remember airbags was a big target. And even the keys of the cars, I think that was also another huge issue at one time.
Exactly. And mixing centers, they leave the keys in the car because they're so vast. In many cases, there are so many vehicles, they can't really run a good key system. And then there's the catalytic converters, which are probably the most attractive part to take off of a vehicle these days. So anyway, there's plenty of incentive to get inside. Some of the other risk factors, though, for Autorack shippers, it really boils down to whether the rail car is moving. If a car is loaded at a mixing center and then sent to a switching yard, and if it sits on a side track for any length of time, particularly, let's say, over 24 hours, there's a good chance that people who just want to mess with the vehicle will get involved and try to figure out how to get in and maybe just cut a cable or make an attempt to cut a bolt. Of course, if it's a hardened one, they're not going to get it open with a bolt seal cutter. But that's where the risk lies, and that's why a hardened bolt seal is the recommended type of seal to lock these things up. But they can get into anything if given enough time and determination. So there is organized crime stealing vehicles, but they're going to typically take a softer target, like just getting into a mixing yard at an odd time, at night.
Nothing surprises me anymore.
But of course those vehicles were not inside of a rail car. So what I'd heard also has happened not too long ago was a rail car sitting on a side track and some determined thieves that got inside, but they had to come up with a way to ramp the vehicles off the rail car, and they couldn't slide the ramps out. So they decided to use a garage door for a ramp. And you can imagine what happened when they tried to back a a vehicle down a garage door.
Wow. Holy, that's a you can't make this stuff up situation, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. It's funny, we talk about this all the time, especially you and I, people have been in the industry for a long time. It's a lot of it's about making your shipments a hard target, right? If it's not appealing, if it's going to be too much effort and it requires, as you say, that time and the tools, because we both know if you have those, then pretty much you can get into anything. You're going to move on to an easier target.
That's right. You mentioned tools, but the hardened bolt seals that we sell they all require a tool to easily remove the bolt at destination. So we are controlling the issuance of these tools, and we vet them to ensure that they are appropriate parties to receive one of the tools.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's another layer of security that we offer people, having to, requiring a unique removal tool. It's not like you can go down and buy this out of a, Home Depot or something. You can only get it through us. We track it, log it. We even control who buys it, right? As you know, permissions and controls are put into place to make sure that just some random person saying, oh, well, I was told to order these, if they don't have that authorization, we won't sell it to them, right? So we take a lot of steps to prevent people even from trying to sneak and get a tool to get something like that.
Yes, and barcoding of rail car seals. Many manufacturers are starting to barcode them and actually keep track of seals and seal numbers on each and every rail car. It's easy to barcode certain types of seals, particularly anodized aluminum-bodied cable seals, and then our new generation of auto bolt seals, the hardened type with the global auto lock that we manufacture to be probably the easiest to barcode. And then I also am fond of the fluorescent greenish color of the locking body for the front of the rail car.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good fit, and I recall the push. I'm not sure if it was Toyota by themselves, but I remember many years ago that push to the barcoding, which makes perfect sense. People leveraging their ERP systems to verify it and track it, and we both know people were typically writing the number down on the BOL, and sometimes somebody's handwriting versus somebody else's, and you don't want to have somebody rejecting a load or questioning it. Takes away that concern of somebody's handwriting not being legible too.
Yes, and I do believe it did come from Toyota. In fact, Georgetown, Kentucky's manufacturing site was the first location to receive those barcoded seals from us. They were global auto locks, and we just had to work through some technical challenges of getting the barcode to read on the green-bodied seals. The neutral on the global auto lock is white, so that's easy. But as of now, all colors can be barcoded.
Excellent. Yeah, I know we've made many advances in that area, and I can't believe we've been at this for over 20 minutes. So I'll just wrap it up here and just say, thanks so much for spending some time here with us. I know you're probably getting ready to hit the road and go for meetings, but I wanted to get somebody on that obviously was an expert for the automotive industry and been doing this for a long time, like myself. But down the road we'll definitely have to reconnect again. And I'm sure there's a few other industries we can talk about. But thanks so much for joining us today, Scott. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for your time, Jeremy. Have a great day.
You too. To our listeners, stay on the lookout regarding our 150th year celebration content. We just posted a great blog actually covering one of our founders, Emil Tyden, who created the Tyden ball seal. And if you wish to learn more about Tyden Solutions, please take a moment to review our website at tydenbrooks.com, or you can follow and share our content on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.